Welcome to the Engagement Fit Drive podcast. I'm Andrew Aubrey.
And I'm Tracy Moxie. Through insightful discussions and practical strategies, get ready to unlock the tools you need to thrive and make your unique mark on the world. In part 1 of this episode, we will be unpacking and talking about my Innovator drive and how that contrasts with Andrew's Moderator drive. Welcome back. In our last episode, we looked at the 4 drives that have a time world view component to them, and they are visionary, looking ahead, the first responder, which is very much about what's happening right now, our orientated drive, who goes back to the past for reference, and our integrator, which is the holistic view, past, present, and future. It is helpful to reflect on what that means for you and how you perceive time. We really hope that you're enjoying our podcast as much as we are making them and that they are helpful.
Thank you, Tracy. So let's dive in today. I'll start by defining the moderated drive and share what the drive needs are. Remember that there are 2 considerations in managing drives well. One aspect is the drive energy itself. Your dominant drive energy is so natural it's like breathing, and that's where awareness and understanding is so important so that you can manage the drive well. And the second aspect is managing the drive needs and remembering that these dominant drive energies are not something you can ignore. They are always there. So managing the energy and need of the drive well is how you sustainably build your natural patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving into strengths. Right, let me define the moderator drive. As a moderator, you may have a strong need for fairness and stability. You probably dislike situations where someone is not feeling heard and understood, or where someone has given an unfair advantage over others. In these situations, you will naturally want to give that person a chance to speak or level the playing field. You tend to have a natural drive to do things in the way they are communicated and expected. You're probably very understanding and compliant and may prefer environments with clear rules, expectations, or guidelines. You may live by the motto of treating everyone the same. No exceptions. You work to create stability and predictability in your relationships and environments. You therefore might resist sudden or recurring change, as this tends to destabilize and introduce uncertainty. You probably work to reduce friction by bringing clarity, consistency, and understanding around rules and expectations, believing that when things are clear, there's less chance of misalignment, favoritism, or conflict. You probably avoid highly competitive environments, preferring a win-win approach where everyone can feel like a winner. Moderators are naturally fair and compliant and thrive in environments where there's stability, harmony, peace, synergy, and unity. The drive needs of a moderator are clarity on expectations, rules and procedures, fairness, and predictable environments.
Let's have a look at the Innovator drive in some detail. So this is the drive that is thinking out of the box. You will love to think out of the box and may often create change through your creative new ideas. You embrace innovative ways of going about things, and this may sometimes frustrate the more conservative or conventional thinkers and executors. But when you engage in new ways to do things and stretch the team towards creative ways of thinking, you may be highly energized. You are energized by the act of creative and innovative thinking itself. Even if that's where it ends, you probably love to spin ideas around in your mind and look at things from different angles. Innovators are creative and always looking for a new and better way of doing something. They thrive in conditions where they have the freedom and opportunity to rethink and ideate and continuously come up with new and creative ways of doing things. You may prefer to brainstorm with other creative thinkers or on your own, but creative thinking is what energizes you. The needs of this drive is to make time and opportunities to contribute ideas. You need the freedom to think outside the box and follow the creative flow. And then someone to execute my ideas. If you do not have drives like Initiator or Navigator, you may need to collaborate with others so that you can get your ideas executed.
And that's an important point to make around the Innovator drive, is that with the Innovator drive, ideation is the point. So depending on what your other dominant drives are, there might be people who don't have drives that are able to execute the ideas that you come up with. And that's where collaboration may be important. But otherwise, Tracy, for example, has both Initiator and Navigator drives as her dominant drives, as well as Innovator. So Tracy, what does Innovator look like for you?
It's a natural want to, whatever I see, I'm always going, how can this be better? How can it look better? How can it be presented better? How can it work better? So it's always up leveling. It's a need to, and energy of making it better. I started a podcast 2 years ago now. I still think every time I make the podcast, how can I make it different? How can I ask more powerful questions? How can I make people think more? It's an inborn thing for the innovator, is to constantly be thinking how things can be done better or different. Not always better, but maybe different. Maybe just adding in some color to something or making it look a bit differently. So it's very much about change. And I suppose we also get bored with just leaving things the same way all the time. We look for change because it's energizing for us.
And Tracy, one thing that you've been teaching me is around the importance of feedback and using feedback in that process of what needs to change. Do you want to elaborate on the importance of feedback for you?
Feedback, hugely important, because the Innovator Drive wants to constantly be changing things, and it is termed as a disruptor drive because you are disrupting things that could possibly be working and operating just fine. There is definitely that awareness we need to have from feedback that we're given. Is this absolutely necessary? Is it going to make an impact if we execute this new idea? Or are we just changing it for the sake of changing it because you've come up with this creative idea? So feedback is very important from the people that you work with on the project or whatever's being done, in terms of, is it actually necessary? Yes, that's a great idea. Yes, it's going to make a difference. Let's run with it. So I think from that point of view, it's different when you're on your own. You can absolutely do anything you want in your business, and you can try and test and fail if necessary. But certainly in the company situations or team situations, it's about the team. It's not only about you. And is it going to actually make an impact for the team? Is it going to be of benefit?
What I find helpful to understand in trying to understand this drive better as well is the concept of design thinking. There are 5 stages to design thinking. Stage number 1 is empathize. Research your user's needs. Stage number 2 is state your user's needs and problems. Stage 3 is ideate, challenge assumptions and create ideas. Stage 4 is prototype, start to create solutions. And stage 5 is test, try your solutions out. And that ties in beautifully with your whole feedback loop there. And sometimes people might feel that they've got to a certain stage and they have to go right back to the drawing board and start all over again. Whereas using feedback as a mechanism to say, okay, what aspects are working and what's not working, and then how do we move forward from there, can be really helpful.
Exactly, and especially with the people that are actually using or doing, or it's their job to use this thing that you want to recreate. They're the best person to get feedback from, because they know exactly what's working and what not, and what is not working. Collaboration and communication are key for everything in life that we do. I think that communication is very important. So, Andrew, are you going to lead us through a little bit how an innovator would come along and disrupt the moderator's way of thinking?
Yes, I come from an IT technical background, IT support technical background, and that environment taught me many things that I thought were really valuable. First of all, in terms of there's always a need for new technology and for new systems to be rolled out. But one of the golden rules of how you deploy new systems is to make sure that you've done a test scenario first before you implement it in a live environment, because otherwise it just causes chaos. And there are a number of different drive energies in the engagement fit drive framework that play very specifically towards predictability, certainty, and clarity of expectations and so on. And so when innovation happens, it's really important to understand what that innovation brings and how it's going to impact a live environment, for example. And so there are many aspects around Moderator, and we've discussed some in the description there of what moderators do well and what the drive energy does really well. And that is one of the key components of moderators is efficiency. And you have this ability to come up with standard operating procedures that are tried and tested. And so when you're under pressure and when there's stressful situations, you can go to what you know is working. You don't have to think about it. You know it's worked. And that brings a level of efficiency and stability. And it makes the environment predictable. There are certain types of industries. I can think about the military, I think about healthcare, I think about the aviation space, among others, where predictability and routine, standard operating procedures, clarity on rules, expectations, and procedures are mission critical to an organization in those areas. And the reason why they can be effective is that everyone is on exactly the same page about what is expected, what the rules of engagement are, and how to do it. So when you put in situations that are high pressure or highly stressful, you can rely on the training that you've received. And that's part of what Moderator brings. So change for a moderator can be very difficult if they're not involved or if expectations and clarity is not there. And if there's a lot of fast change that directly affects the very things that make the way you work stable and predictable.
Even with you just going through that and reminding someone like an innovator how important that is, because those policies and procedures, I mean, they link to safety, right? People's lives are involved. If you don't stick to it could be tragedy. So it's just a nice reminder that there is meaning to those rules and regulations. There's a huge reason why they are there. They're not just there because they're rules. And we have to remember, as the other drives that will take huge risk and be creative and innovative, we have to remember that where is the time and place for that? Where can we be more effective with our creativity and not be disruptive? And with that communication, and this is where these drives are so beautiful, aren't they, Andrew, is when we have teams, we have the moderator and listening to the moderator. They are not just being sticklers and saying this is the way it has to be. There's a reason for it. and having those conversations around and understanding each other and why that's in place. And yes, you can be creative, Tracy, but let's see where we can be creative. Let's work together. And I think that makes a team highly effective, highly effective, with much better communication. And that will bring harmony, won't it? That will be that we understand each other and we can work together.
There's another component around Moderator, which is really good to explore. And there are 2 drives in the Engagement Fit Drive framework, primarily that deal with how you deal with conflict, that being the Captain Drive and the Moderator Drive. Now, the Moderator Drive, as the name implies, sees fairness as a one-size-fits-all scenario. What works for one person should apply to all people. It's important for moderators to recognize that that doesn't always work. And there can also be situations where the whole way that moderators deal with conflict is around finding a win-win solution. But if you hit a stalemate there, that's where you definitely need the other style of conflict management, which is the captain. So the moderator, one of the strengths of a moderator is to be able to sit people down where there's conflict and to listen to both sides of the story. And the point of that is to be able to find areas of agreement so that we can come together with a strategy to move forward, and it's a win-win for both sides of that equation. Another aspect of that conflict resolution process is the importance of clarity, having clarity of the expectations of all the people involved and clarity on rules and procedures, and ensuring that everyone's on the same page. Because once you understand that and you know that, that can also work towards a situation where there is more synergy and it's a calm environment.
I do have other drives that allow me to, my Initiate and Navigator, which allow me to actually take my ideas to the next level. But it also can be a little bit of a, how do I want to word this? Not a hindrance, but a bit of a setback, because I have to consciously make time for ideas. I'm so busy going to do them that I don't always make time, because it's never one idea. You come up with a lot of ideas, and maybe out of that many ideas, we get one good idea. For people that don't have that drive, they may come up with way more ideas than I do, whereas I'm so busy already on to going to execute that idea. So I do have to make time for just thinking, just coming up and being creative. And for me, this is in the shower. Normally I have all my great ideas when I have a quiet mind. But yes, I definitely try and work more on giving myself time to be more creative. That's probably why I'm not as creative as I could be, because I'm already on to going to do it, putting it into action and seeing if it's going to work.
That's a great insight, Tracy. And I think a very important thing to mention as well is this need for an innovator to be able to create free space in your mind to be able to think and to ideate. And like I said earlier on, each of these drives require you can't switch the drive energy off. So it's a part of you. And there are certain drives in this framework that require time. And it's really important for people to understand in an extremely busy world the importance of creating time slots like that, so you can think, or you can learn, or you can ideate. And that is where you can come up with incredible ideas or thoughts, but it requires you to be able to schedule that in your day and to make space for that. Tracy, I wanted to ask you, do you have trusted advisors, people who you can call up and you can use as people who will give you feedback and help you in the process of brainstorming and ideating?
I don't, Andrew. At the moment, I don't. But I'd love to do that. It's definitely something that would really enhance the ideas that came up, and could you brainstorm, and there would be lots of creativity. And I would love to be with people that could actually come up with brilliant ideas. They gave 2 groups of up-and-coming photographers, and they said to the one group, you can take as many photos as you want. The other group, they said, you need to take one good photo, only one good photo. And obviously they went and did all their taking of photos, and they came back, and the photo that was the best photo came from the group that were allowed to take many photos. So there is a lot of ideas that need to come up for us to get the idea.
And that's such an important point. I was listening to a very interesting interview, but on one of Simon Sinek's Little Bit of Optimism podcasts. And it was so interesting because he was speaking to a chap called Lee, I can't remember his surname, and he worked with Steve Jobs around Apple. And Lee was from the ad agency. And Steve Jobs, as we all know, was a next level visionary. It was actually a really good picture of how visionary and innovation work together, in that Steve Jobs had this ability to look 2 horizons further than anyone else could. And he had such clarity around what he was needing and what he was creating, so that when he worked with the ad agency, as people were ideating and coming up with different ideas on advertising the Apple brand and so on, Steve Jobs would be a very core component of that team. And they would put stuff on the table, and Steve would keep saying, well, does that align with the vision that I see? And it's such a valuable thing to consider, that is that close working between Lee and Steve Jobs in terms of a lot of the most influential Apple advertisements that have ever been created, and to sort of pointing forward to what the Apple brand stands for today. One of the things around the Innovator drive that separates it from being innovative or being creative is that the Innovator drive is really good at seeing something that's working, but then also being able to ideate and maybe bring together components or aspects in a different context. And what I mean by that, it's a bit like when they came up with the light bulb. They didn't look at a candle and try to recreate the candle to come up with a light bulb. They took the basics of how a candle works, and then looked at other non-related things that led towards the innovation and creation of the light bulb.
Yeah. Very interesting that visionary and innovator booster, and that the visionary can take the innovator to the next level.
And the key point there with Steve Jobs was the absolute clarity on that vision. And then the ideas that came up, it wasn't just one idea built on another. And as the ideas were put together and created, even the words that they used in that very famous Apple advert, think different. It started off on a platform, but the end result was Steve Jobs keep checking in and figuring out how that relates to the vision that he wanted to create. So wonderfully interesting thing to consider, and certainly a great podcast to listen to. One thing I also wanted to explore with you around the whole innovation thing is becoming aware of what time of the day or which environments are most conducive to your creativity.
That's interesting. I think it's the times when I'm not, but actually, no, I don't even know. Maybe even because even in my coaching sessions, an idea will come to my mind and I'll just explore it with the client. So for me, certainly it's at any time, Andrew, any time.
Okay.
For the actual innovation part is when I've got a bit of a quiet mind. If something comes to mind, or I've just had an idea, I will act on that no matter where it is or the circumstance. So I can't say that it's a specific time. I'm definitely a morning person. I get up really early and I have high energy most of the day, but I love the mornings. I'm definitely an early bird.
Very good. Very good. It might be worth explaining what a well-managed innovator looks like. And
which, of course, I'm still learning.
so a well-managed innovator drive is someone who can prioritize where disruption and innovation are most needed, and then clearly understand the problem and bring creative solutions that meet the real needs while retaining what is still valuable. A well-mastered moderator drive reduces friction and enhances efficiency and effectiveness by bringing calm, stability, fairness, and clarity around rules and expectations.
There you go.
Both infinitely valuable drives in certain contexts and in situations. And if these drives resonate with you, what are the situations where they bring value to you? And what are the situations where you might need to reflect on components that need better management so that you can work towards those definitions of what those well-mastered drives look like?
Lovely, Andrew. And then we welcome you back for part 2 of this, where we're going to be discussing our Andrew's moderator with my navigator. So thank you for spending this time with us.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Engagement Fit Drive podcast.
We hope you found invaluable insights that will empower you on your path to self-discovery and fulfillment.
Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with anyone who's ready to unlock their full potential.
Until next time, keep engaging, keep thriving, and keep driving towards a life filled with purpose.